The dim light of the setting sun filtered through the dusty window panes of my living room, casting elongated shadows that danced across the wooden floor. I sank deeper into the worn-out armchair, my hands trembling slightly as I traced the grooves of the fabric with my fingers. Memories flooded my mind, vivid and bittersweet. I could almost hear the laughter of my youth, the sweet melodies of a time long gone, echoing in the silence that now enveloped me. My heart ached with the weight of loneliness. It was a feeling that had become all too familiar. Just then, the soft creak of the door pulled me from my reverie. "Grandma Maria?" Lucas's voice was hesitant as he stepped into the room, his eyes searching for comfort in the familiar surroundings. He looked so different from the boy I once knew, now a young man, burdened by the heartache of a recent breakup. My heart twisted for him. "Lucas, my dear," I exclaimed, forcing a smile. Come in. He shuffled closer, his shoulders slumped, as if the weight of the world rested on them. "Can I sit here?" he asked, his gaze dropping to the floor. I nodded, patting the cushion beside me. He sat down, and for a moment, silence enveloped us once more. I could see the pain etched on his face, and I felt an urge to reach out, to envelop him in warmth and understanding. "Do you want to talk about it?" I prompted gently, my voice soft and inviting. He hesitated, biting his lip, and I watched as the turmoil swirled in his deep brown eyes. I don't know what to do, Grandma. She was everything to me, and now she's gone," he confessed, his voice cracking. I could feel his anguish, a mirror to my own loneliness, and it stirred something within me, an instinct to soothe, to nurture. "Sometimes, love can be like a storm, Lucas," I replied, leaning in closer, my voice low and intimate. "It can sweep us off our feet, leaving us lost and confused. But you have to remember that it's okay to grieve. You're not alone in this." He looked at me then, his gaze piercing, as if he were searching for something beneath the surface of my words. "But what if I feel different now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if I don't know how to move on?" His vulnerability ignited a fire within me, an unexpected surge of protectiveness. "You don't have to rush to move on, my sweet boy. Healing takes time," I said, my heart racing as I leaned even closer, the air between us thickening. "And sometimes it's okay to find comfort in unexpected places." Lucas's breath hitched, and I could see confusion flickering in his eyes. I hesitated, realizing the line I was teetering on. But the warmth of his presence was intoxicating, and the loneliness that had gripped me for so long felt momentarily stifled. "You can always find solace here with me," I added, my voice dropping to a whisper, the words hanging between us like a fragile thread. He nodded slowly, and I could see the internal struggle etched on his face. "But it feels wrong," he murmured, almost to himself. My heart raced at the thought of crossing boundaries. Yet I was drawn to him in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. "Sometimes the heart doesn't listen to what's right or wrong," I said softly, my gaze locked with his, trying to navigate the storm brewing between us. "It just craves connection." The air felt electric, and in that charged moment, I leaned in and pressed my lips against his, a gentle kiss that sent shivers down my spine. It was a fleeting moment, a spark igniting a fire that had long been dormant. As I pulled away, the weight of what had just happened crashed down on us, our eyes wide with shock and exhilaration. Guilt washed over me, but there was also a thrill I couldn't deny. "Oh, Lucas!" I breathed, my heart racing. I could see the conflict in his eyes, guilt, confusion, desire. "What have we done?" he murmured, his voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that in this moment, wrapped in our shared loneliness, we had crossed a line that would change everything. The world outside continued its course, oblivious to the storm brewing within our hearts. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows through the dusty streets as I sat at my workbench in the garage, tinkering with the old engine of my truck. I could hear the faint sound of laughter drifting in from the house, and for a moment, I felt a pang of unease spiral through my gut. Lucas had been visiting his grandmother more often lately, And while I trusted my wife, Maria, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Hey, Jorge, you still working on that hunk of junk?" My friend Carlos called out as he strolled by, disrupting my thoughts. I forced a laugh, but it felt hollow. "Yeah, just trying to get it running before the big trip next month," I replied, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't help but glance toward the house, where I could picture them inside, sharing stories and laughter that rang too freely. It was just the two of them, and as much as I wanted to dismiss my worries, I felt like a shadow loomed over our family. Later that evening, I returned home to find the kitchen filled with the aroma of Maria's cooking. She was humming softly, and Lucas was perched on a stool, a mischievous grin plastered across his face as he helped her chop vegetables. The sight should have filled me with warmth, but instead, it deepened the knot in my stomach. "Look who's home," Maria chirped, her eyes sparkling. "I made your favorite, Jorge." "Thanks, love," I replied, forcing a smile. But I couldn't ignore the way Lucas looked at Maria, a glint in his eye that made my heart race with discomfort. "You've been spending a lot of time together, haven't you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just trying to help Grandma out, Dad," Lucas said, shrugging, but there was a flicker of something in his expression, defiance or perhaps something deeper. "Yeah, well, don't forget about your own responsibilities," I replied sharply, feeling the tension rise. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, and Maria shot me a warning glance. Dinner was a tense affair, filled with forced laughter and the clanking of cutlery. I studied Lucas, trying to decipher the thoughts swirling behind his bright eyes. He seemed distracted, lost in a daydream that I couldn't penetrate. After the meal, I excused myself, needing to clear my head. In the quiet of the living room, I paced back and forth, my mind racing. I could hear their voices drifting in from the kitchen again, this time more giggly and intimate. The laughter felt too carefree, too familiar. I knew I was being irrational, but the image of them together haunted me. The next day, I decided to confront Maria. I found her in the laundry room, folding clothes, her back turned to me. "Maria," I began, my voice steady but low, "I need to talk to you." She turned, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "What's wrong, Jorge? I've noticed Lucas is here a lot. I don't want him to get too attached. He's still a kid, and you know how emotionally fragile he's been since the breakup." Maria's eyes narrowed slightly. "He's my grandson, Jorge. I'm just being there for him. He needs me." "I get that, but there's a line, Maria. You have to be careful how close you're getting," I said, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "Careful? I'm just being supportive," she snapped, her voice rising. "You're being paranoid." I stepped back, taken aback by her defensiveness. "Maybe I am, but I can't shake the feeling that you're crossing boundaries." Before she could respond, I turned on my heel and stormed out, my heart pounding. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread as I returned to my work. I needed to keep an eye on them, to protect my family from whatever was brewing beneath the surface. That evening, I noticed Lucas arriving at the house earlier than usual. My heart raced as I watched him enter, my instincts screaming at me. As I stood on the porch, hidden in the shadows, I saw the two of them through the window. They were laughing together, their heads close, sharing an intimate moment that sent a chill down my spine. "Lucas, you're such a goofball," Maria laughed, her hand resting on his arm, and in that instant, something inside me snapped. I felt the weight of jealousy and suspicion explode within me, and I knew I had to confront them before it was too late. The air in the house felt thick with tension as Jorge confronted me, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I had been preparing dinner, the aroma of garlic and onions wafting through the small kitchen, but all I could focus on was the storm brewing in his heart. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his presence as commanding as it was menacing. "Maria," he began, his tone low and dangerous. "What's going on between you and Lucas?" I felt my heart race. The heat of his gaze made me uneasy, but I couldn't let him see my fear. "What do you mean, Jorge?" I replied, feigning innocence as I turned to face him, my hands nervously fiddling with the apron strings. "Don't play dumb with me. I see the way you look at him. It's not just grandmotherly love, and you know it." His accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I took a deep breath, trying to muster the confidence I needed. "I'm just trying to support him, Jorge. He's been through a lot lately. I'm a grandmother. For God's sake, I'm comforting him." "Comforting him?" Jorge scoffed, his voice rising. "Is that what you call it? You think I don't know how you've been acting around him?" I could feel my cheeks heat with embarrassment, but I refused to back down. "You don't understand. He lost his girlfriend, and he's vulnerable. I'm just being there for him." "And what about me, Maria?" he snapped, stepping closer, his face inches from mine. "What about what I need? You're not the only one who feels lonely in this house." I swallowed hard. Jorge had a way of twisting the truth, of making me feel like the villain in our story. "I need you to trust me, Jorge. You're overreacting. There's nothing inappropriate happening." "Is that so?" he challenged, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Then why do I see you two laughing and whispering together like you're some lovesick teenagers? It makes my skin crawl." I clench my fists, feeling both anger and fear. "You're being ridiculous. Lucas is my family. He's just a boy who needs a grandmother. Do you really think I would betray you like that?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jorge's expression hardened, and for a moment, I feared he might explode. "You're playing with fire, Maria. If I find out you're lying, I'm not lying." I interrupted, my voice stronger than I felt. "You need to stop accusing me of things I haven't done. You're pushing me away." He shook his head, a mix of frustration and hurt etched into his features. "Maybe I'm not the one pushing you away. Maybe you're already gone in your head." I felt my heart shatter a little at his words. How could he not see that I was trying to connect with someone who felt lost, just as I did? "Jorge, look at me," I pleaded, stepping toward him. "I love you, but I need you to trust me. I'm not the enemy here." He took a step back, crossed his arms defensively. "Trust is earned, Maria. And right now, you're making it very hard for me to believe you." I felt the weight of despair settle on my shoulders. "What do you want from me? Do you want me to stop caring for Lucas? He's hurting. Maybe you need to stop being so close to him," Jorge suggested, his voice icy. "I don't want him in this house anymore." My heart sank at his words. "You can't mean that, Jorge. He's family. You can't just cast him out. You're putting our marriage at risk for a boy who isn't even yours," he shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "I'm not risking anything," I retorted, my voice rising to match his. "I'm trying to be a good grandmother. I'll be watching you, Maria," he warned, his voice low and menacing. "And if I see anything that suggests otherwise, I won't hesitate to act." As he stormed out of the kitchen, I felt a mix of dread and defiance. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, and for the first time, I questioned how long I could keep this secret. My heart was torn between my loyalty to Jorge and the connection I had built with Lucas, a connection that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Later that evening, I lay in bed, unable to shake the words of Jorge from my mind. I thought about Lucas and how easily he had slipped into my heart, filling a void I didn't know was there. I had tried to be strong, to maintain a facade of normalcy, but Jorge's accusations had cracked that illusion wide open. In the quiet darkness, I could only hope that Lucas was safe, that he hadn't felt the brunt of Jorge's wrath. My heart ached for him, for the innocence we had both lost in this twisted web we had woven. I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the world pressing down on my chest. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the room, and I could hear the muted hum of life outside. But inside, it felt like storm clouds were gathering. My heart raced as I thought about what might happen if Jorge discovered the truth. He had been acting strangely, his eyes narrowing every time Lucas visited. I could feel the tension crackling in the air, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. Just then, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up and saw a message from Lucas, his words a mix of excitement and fear. "Can we meet tonight? I need to see you." A shiver ran down my spine. I had craved these moments with him, the thrill of our secret, but now it felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I quickly typed back, "Yes, but we have to be careful. Jorge is suspicious." The minutes passed like hours, and as the clock struck 8, my heart pounded louder. I heard the front door creak open, and instinctively, I held my breath. Jorge's heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway, and I could sense the tension radiating from him. When he entered the room, I forced a smile, but I could see the storm brewing in his eyes. "Where's Lucas?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "He's just out with friends," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "Friends?" he scoffed, eyeing me suspiciously. "He spends too much time here. I don't like it." I felt a rush of anger mixed with fear. "He's my grandson, Jorge. He needs support after everything he's been through." "Support?" he echoed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Or is it something else? What's really going on between you two?" My heart sank as I realized he was onto us. "Nothing, Jorge. You're imagining things." I insisted, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "I saw you two laughing together, Maria. You're not fooling me. I know there's something more." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Jorge's eyes flicked to it, and he snatched it from the nightstand. My stomach dropped as he read Lucas's message. "What's this?" he demanded, his voice rising in anger. "Plans to meet at night? What kind of grandmother are you? Jorge, please. It's not what you think," I pleaded, but I could see the fury boiling in his veins. "Not what I think," he spat. "I'll show you what I think." He threw the phone onto the bed, the screen shattering under the force. "You think you can betray me and get away with it?" I took a step back, my heart racing. "You don't understand. I care for him, but it's not like that." "Not like that?" he interrupted, his voice rising dangerously. "You're lying to yourself, Maria. You're a disgrace." I felt the tears prick at my eyes, a mix of fear and desperation. "I love him, Jorge. He needs me in ways you can't understand." His laughter was cold and menacing. "Love? You call this love? You're nothing but a pathetic old woman chasing after a boy. You're going to ruin our family." As he shouted, I heard a soft voice from the hallway. "Grandma, is everything okay?" It was Lucas. My heart sank further. "Stay back, Lucas," I called out, panic flooding my veins. I couldn't let him see the side of Jorge, but it was too late. Jorge's eyes were wild, and I could see the rage boiling over. "Get out here, you little brat," he yelled, and my stomach twisted in fear. I rushed to the door, pushing it open just as Lucas stepped into the room, looking confused and terrified. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing between me and Jorge. "Nothing. Just go back," I urged, trying to shield him from the storm brewing in front of us. Jorge took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You've got no right to be here, boy. You need to understand the consequences of your actions." "What actions?" Lucas asked, his voice wavering. I could see the confusion in his eyes, the way he looked at me, searching for answers. "Lucas, please," I started, but Jorge cut me off. "Enough," he shouted. "You both think this is a game? I'll show you what happens when you betray me." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had never seen him like this, and I knew deep down that we were standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to plunge into darkness. The air in the small, dimly lit room felt charged with tension as I stood before Lucas, my heart racing and my mind a whirlwind of emotions. He had decided to pull away, and the thought of losing him sent a jolt of desperation through my veins. I could see it in his eyes, the struggle, the confusion, the guilt. He was so young, so innocent. Yet here we were, entangled in a web of desires that neither of us fully understood. "Lucas," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper, I stepped closer, the warmth of his body beckoning me like a moth to a flame. Please don't do this. You don't understand what you mean to me. I reached out and touched his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. He flinched at my touch, and it broke my heart. I can't, Grandma, he stammered, his voice trembling. This isn't right. I shouldn't feel this way about you. His admission hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could see the internal conflict waging war within him, and it mirrored my own turmoil. Lucas, I pleaded, my voice thick with emotion. You're not just my grandson. You're everything I've been missing. I'm so lonely, and you make me feel alive again. I stepped even closer, looking deep into his eyes, searching for any sign of his resolve faltering. He shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. I can't let this happen. It's wrong, Maria. You're my grandmother. His voice cracked, and I could see the pain etched into his features. Is it wrong to love someone? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Is it wrong to want to feel something? To be desired? You're not just a boy to me. You're a man. And my voice faltered as I struggled to find the right words. I need you. He turned away, running a hand through his hair, the weight of my confession crashing down on us both. You need to think about what this will do to the family. Mom, she'll be devastated as she finds out. His words struck me like a cold slap, and for a moment, I felt the icy grip of reality creeping in. Your mother doesn't understand me, Lucas. She sees me as nothing but an old woman. But you see me. I stepped back, trying to give him some space, but the distance only made my heart ache more. I don't want to lose you. Please, let's not end this. Maria, I care about you, but this can't be what we want. It's not just about us anymore. His voice was steady, but the tears streaming down his cheeks told a different story. I felt my heart shatter as I realized the gravity of our situation. What if I told you that I'm willing to fight for us? That I'm willing to face whatever consequences come our way? I took a deep breath, my voice trembling. You mean that much to me. I can't let you go. Before he could respond, the front door creaked open, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. Lucas's eyes widened in panic. It's Dad, he exclaimed, glancing back toward the door. He can't see us like this. In that moment, I felt a rush of adrenaline as I urged him to hide behind the curtain. Quick, go! I whispered urgently, my heart racing. My mind raced with the reality of our situation. Jorge was home early, and I could only imagine his anger upon discovering us. Lucas obeyed, but I could see the torment in his eyes as he disappeared from view. I took a step back, my heart pounding as I composed myself, preparing for Jorge's arrival. When Jorge stepped into the room, his eyes were dark and stormy. Maria, where's Lucas? He demanded, scanning the space as if he could sense the tension lingering in the air. He just left. I stammered, my heart racing. He didn't want to stay. I was just talking to him. Talking? Jorge's voice was laced with suspicion. That's all you were doing? I saw you two laughing together. What's going on? I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the instinct to protect Lucas overwhelming me. It's nothing, Jorge. We were just reminiscing about old times. You know how he is emotional after his breakup. Jorge stepped closer, his gaze piercing. Don't lie to me, Maria. I know there's something more between you two. As he spoke, I felt a chill run down my spine. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, and I knew this confrontation was just the beginning of a storm that would engulf us all. As I stepped into the dimly lit hallway of my grandmother's house, the familiar scent of old wood and lingering perfume enveloped me like a ghost. My heart raced, a mix of fear and anticipation. Jorge was home, and I could feel the tension radiating from the living room. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, only to find Jorge standing by the window, his back to me, silhouetted against the fading light. Lucas, he said, his voice low and tense. You need to come here. The way he said my name sent a shiver down my spine. I stepped forward, my mind racing. Was he aware of everything? Did he know about me and Maria? I hesitated, but I couldn't ignore the commanding tone in his voice. As I approached, I noticed Maria standing in the corner, her expression a mix of concern and defiance. The air crackled with unspoken words, a storm brewing in the small space. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice betrayed me, quavering at the edges. "Sit," Jorge commanded, gesturing towards the chair opposite him. I complied, my heart pounding, every instinct screaming at me to flee. "I saw you too," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Laughing together, whispering like you share some secret." He leaned closer, a menacing glint in his eyes. "What kind of secret is it, Lucas?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "We were just talking, Jorge. She's my grandmother. We were just—" "Don't lie to me," he spat, cutting me off. "I know what you're doing. I know what she's been doing." His gaze flicked to Maria, who stood rigid, her face pale. "Jorge, please," Maria interjected, stepping forward. "It's not what you think. Lucas is just struggling." "Struggling?" Jorge interrupted, his voice rising. "Struggling with what? With your seduction? Your betrayal? Tell me, Maria, is this what our family has come to?" In that moment, Maria's facade cracked. "I didn't betray you, Jorge. I'm not who you think I am." The words tumbled out, urgent and desperate. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused and alarmed, my heart racing even faster. "I'm not your grandmother," she shouted, her voice breaking. "I'm your mother. I had to leave you all those years ago." Silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. I felt the ground shift beneath me, my world tilting on its axis. "What?" I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper. Jorge staggered back, his rage faltering for just a moment, as if the weight of her revelation had struck him. "You're lying," he declared weakly, but I could see the doubt swirling in his eyes. "No, Jorge," Maria pleaded, her voice trembling. "I had to hide to protect us, protect him. I thought I'd lost you both forever." "Protect us from what?" I demanded, trying to grasp the reality of the situation. "From the truth." Her eyes were wide with fear. "I thought you would be better off, but I never stopped loving you. I never stopped being your mother." Jorge's expression twisted into something darker, a mix of confusion and rage. "You kept this from me?" From him, in the chaos of emotions. Jorge's hand moved to the waistband of his pants, and I realized he had a weapon. "Stay away from him," he shouted, the gun now in his hand, shaking slightly. "Jorge, don't!" Maria screamed, stepping between us, but the fear in her voice only seemed to fuel his anger. In that instant, the world slowed down. Jorge's finger tightened on the trigger, and I lunged forward, desperate to intervene, but in the frenzy, the gun went off. The sound echoed through the house, a deafening crack that shattered everything. Jorge stumbled back, shock replacing rage on his face. I felt the heat of panic wash over me as I realized he hadn't aimed at me. I turned to Maria, who was now crumpled on the floor, her eyes wide, staring at me, filled with pain and disbelief. "Mom!" I screamed, rushing to her side. Blood pooled around her, and my heart dropped. "No, no, no. Please, Maria." Jorge stood frozen, a mixture of horror and regret etched across his face, the weapon slipping from his grasp. The reality of our shattered lives hung heavy in the air, a fragile web of lies and love torn asunder. As the echoes of the gunshot faded, I knew our small town would never be the same. The truth had come out, and with it, the devastating consequences of our tangled relationships. We were bound by blood and betrayal, forever altered by the choices we made in the shadows of our lives.